Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I want to continue my series looking at each team in Formula One at the roughly the halfway point of the season. So today I'll be looking at the other Alfa Romeo, of course. So of course, Alfa Romeo's two drivers, Bottas and Zhou. Bottas with 5 points so far this year, Zhou with 4 points. In the race head-to-head, Bottas does have the slight advantage, 7-4 in favor of Bottas in races where both drivers finish. The average finishing position, though, very, very close. 13.86 for Bottas, 13.85 for Zhou. In quality, it's not as close as it is in the race. Bottas has the advantage there, 8-4 in qualifying. The qualifying delta is 0.258, so basically 2.5 tenths of a second in favor of Bottas. But I think there was a recent race, I think Belgium, where Bottas out-qualified by Zhou by quite a bit, but not enough for me to kind of delete it as an outlier. But prior to that, the qualifying delta very, very close. Average on my power rankings, just as something fun, 13.9 for Bottas and Zhou 16.2. So I do think that Bottas has been slightly better, the slightly better driver of the two so far this season, but that being said, still pretty close. I made a points model looking at how many points they should get for a backmarker or a lower midfield team, and 16.47 for Bottas, 6.47 for Bottas, 6.81 for Zhou. So Zhou expected to have a little bit more points. A lot of that is from him starting 5th in Hungary a couple of weeks ago. That being said, still very close and not that far off their point totals of 5 and 4. This number here is basically a Z-score that I created, and it basically shows the disparity between teammates. Smaller the number, smaller the gap between them, and for them it's 0.1, and which ranks 10th amongst teammates. So through 12 races so far in 2023, I think the model says that Bottas and Zhou have been the closest drivers together. So looking a little bit at their qualifying gap and how they've progressed through the year, through the first 5 races, so by Bahrain to Miami, their average gap to pole was 1.504 seconds, which ranked 9th. Through races 6 through 12, that gap has dropped to 1.04 seconds, which has improved to 8th. However, there are a lot of races in that 6 to 12 which I couldn't use, which were rain affected because you can't use that data. Looking at Alfa Romeo a little bit through their history, 2020 only 8 points, 8 in the constructors. Of course, they were hurt a lot by Ferrari's engine being nuked that year. 2021, a little bit of a recovery, 13 points, but dropped to 9th in the constructors. Of course, Williams finished 8th in the championship that year, aided by George Russell's qualifying podium from Spa. So that's a little bit of a outlier there. 2022, really, really nice rebound, first year of the new regulations, 55 points, which was 6th in the championship. And I remember at the start of last year, they were at points, they were the 4th, arguably 3rd fastest, almost equal with the Mercedes at the start of last year. They built one of the lightest cars to start the new regulations, so they benefited massively from that. But basically, as the year went along, they got less and less points. So I think a lot of people could see this kind of massive downturn in points coming. So 2023, 9 points total through 12 races, 9th in the constructors. So I think a little pretty predictable. It does feel like with Sauber, Alfa Romeo, they will be losing the Alfa Romeo name next year. But it does feel like they're basically just hanging on until Audi basically makes a team its full works team with its own engine and everything, and they're basically just kind of holding on until then. So that being said, I do think that the drivers have been okay, not amazing, but not terrible either. They've just kind of been average or a little bit below average based on my power rankings, and I do think that I think that both drivers do need to be a bit wary about their seats in Formula One. Sauber, of course, have a young driver, Théo Pourchaire, who is currently leading the Formula 2 championship. And he is a driver who realistically could be in one of their 2 seats next year. So I do think that both Bottas and Zhou do need to be a little bit careful about that, and they're going to be wanting to outperform the other going for the remainder of the year. I do think for them, they're in a pretty close fight for 7th in the Constructors with Williams and Haas. I don't really think AlphaTauri are in that fight, but I think, yeah, so for them, the goal will be getting 7th in the Constructors and eking out Williams and Haas. So that's all for my look at Alfa Romeo through basically the midpoint of the season. I'll be continuing to do this series every other day, and next we'll be looking at Haas, 8th in the Constructors. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.